You're generally considered the most liberal candidate here, at least on the Democratic side. So that means you would be willing to commit to a 1% support of the arts.
Very clever construct. I give you a lot of credit. It's true that I am liberal. I am the most progressive candidate in the race, and I also want to say I am a WNYC listener. So being on stage with Leonard Lopate, I'm getting kind of a thrill here. Look, here's the reality. I think this is a city profoundly determined by our artistic and cultural life. I think there's a lot we can do to protect and enhance it. But I also like to be, I am a progressive, but I can count, and I like to be honest with people about the fact that we have a very serious problem the next few years. I think this is going to be a different discussion. I would like to believe in a year, even, or two. But with all of the city labor contracts open simultaneously, and fiscal challenges of a type we have not seen before. We have seen very profound fiscal challenges and deeper ones before, but we have not seen this particular problem of having every labor contract open at once and the challenges that creates. I have tried to consistently say on any major funding commitments that I don't feel comfortable making them. I do feel comfortable saying that there's a lot we can do in the here and now, and especially over a few years of build-out, to enhance the cultural life of the city, whether you're talking about the plan I've put forward for a tax on the wealthy for early childhood education and after school. It's a tax on people who make $500,000 or more, and the after school component is a place where we can fundamentally reintroduce arts and culture and music back in the public school system on a higher level. It's something we've basically started to lose profoundly during the fiscal crisis of the 70s. I think the reintroduction begins with the after-school program I've proposed. I think we can do a lot more to protect the cultural sector here, including a lot of artists, musicians, et cetera, who are not high income, which is the history of New York City. Creative people who brought their energy and creativity here but did not have a lot of resources. We used to have a real commitment to affordable housing for artists. I want to restore that as part of my affordable housing plan. And I think even within the funding we have, we need to have a renewed focus on fairness, which means we want to be more concerned about funding grassroots cultural organizations in all 5 boroughs, cultural organizations of every ethnicity, including representing some of the newer communities ethnically in our city. So there's a lot we can do within it, but I can't yet get to that particular budgetary commitment.
Well, we're in a situation now where the city depends on groups like poets and writers and other organizations that rely on philanthropies to pay their way. The city relies on those organizations to create arts education programs. The museums are there. I know we took class trips to all of the major museums when I was in school. I don't know if that happens as much today, but there's a lot of interaction between arts programs, artists, actors come into schools and do things, and yet the city does practically nothing to support those artists who are being so generous to the city, both to the city's children and to the city in general. We are the arts capital of the world, and yet you'd never know it when you look at the city budget.
I think we have to differentiate the aspirational piece, and I don't mean this to minimize the question at all. I want to be just blunt about it. We have to differentiate the aspirational piece from the next year or two. Aspirationally, I would like to, as a public school parent myself, as someone deeply concerned about education, I would like to fully reintegrate arts and culture and music into our public schools. I think that is crucial, not just for providing a well-rounded education. I think there's ample evidence that cultural education brings out part of a child's capacity, motivation, connection to the society around them that really deepens their ability to learn on many other levels. And I think this is something a place we have been in the past that we need to get to again, and it's a resource question. I'm not daunted by it. I think over time we can put together the resources. So I differentiate that kind of vision from what I think we can do in the here and the now, and I think 2 pieces are front and center in my vision. the tax on the wealthy for the after-school plan, because if we're going to provide after-school for every middle school child who needs it in the city, that's my plan. I am convinced that the way after-school works, you need an arts and culture element, and you need a recreation element to make the whole thing work, the tutoring and the homework help and everything else work. So it's a natural growth area. And then again, the affordable housing piece, my plan, 200,000 units over 10 years. It's a very different approach than the Bloomberg approach. It is predicated upon requiring the real estate industry to create affordable housing using the power of this city government and all that we control and all that the real estate industry needs of us to be able to do its work and make its profit, raising the bar on what we need back as a public sector. But again, within that, recognizing that artist housing, housing for the cultural sector was profoundly positive and productive for the city, and we have to start down that road again. So I know some of the things we can do in the short term. I know aspirationally I want to see our schools fully integrate arts and culture. I know that the law says even now that there's a level of cultural education that's supposed to be provided and is constantly ignored by the city of New York, and I would not ignore that. I would at least let us make sure we get to that baseline right now. But I think the vision you're talking about, which is a good one, is still a few years away.
It's interesting, though, when you say, what you just said is that you would get to the baseline that's required by law. Well, that would be an expensive baseline to get to, wouldn't it? And therefore, despite this unprecedented next 2 years of the open labor contracts, you'd have to shift a substantial number of tens or perhaps hundreds of millions of dollars into the arts education budget of the Department of Education.
Well, that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it, of course, here's the first conundrum. The law is the law. It's not optional.
It has been.
It has been, but it's I know we're jaded New Yorkers, but it's actually not supposed to be optional. The law is the law. One. Two, what's happened is, and I understand the challenges principals face. They end up in a really tough situation with a budget that they now have more autonomy to control, with the joys and sorrows of that process. Robbing Peter to pay Paul, and arts education is the loser in the equation. Well, again, the law is the law, and I think my approach would be to say to principals that we have to fulfill this mandate. We're going to work with you at City Hall and at the Tweed Building to provide any kind of support and relief we can, but we have to fulfill this mandate. Maybe there's some creative ways to do it, working with nonprofits and other outside groups. But you just can't take it lightly, not just because, one, because it's law, but two, because, again, as a parent, I have seen the multiplier effect. Now, I'm going to embarrass my son, Dante. Is that you over there? Where is he? My son, Dante, is sitting over there. You can see from his hair.
And you've named him after a writer.
And I named him after a writer, the greatest of writers. But Dante went to MS-51 in Brooklyn, like his sister Chiara. They were in a drama program. And they may deny it now, but it has shown in many ways since, at the middle school level, to be in a drama-centered program. I think brought out in them a lot of other capacity. Obviously, we could start with public speaking, at which Dante excels, but we could talk about confidence and presentation and a sort of thoughtfulness about how to prepare. And a lot came out of it. There were sort of life skills, not just enhancement of the rest of education, but life skills, you could argue. So I understand the power of it. So the law first, but also I think there's a great multiplier effect.
I couldn't agree with you more, but I'm interested in what I think you're saying about following the law, which seems to, in terms of how much you have to dedicate, how many classes in all the various major arts realms you have to have, and so forth. I think you're saying if the education budget pie is pretty much set and we're not going to expand that, other pieces of that pie are going to have to be trimmed off to make that arts slice bigger.
And we have to make the arts slice complement the other pieces better, because I do think there's a natural complement. I don't think the arts requirement is exactly massive right now, let's be clear. It's the law, but I don't think it is calling for the kind of pervasiveness a lot of us would like to see. But I think it's a level we can attain in the short term. I think we're obligated to.
Can I jump in just for a moment with a follow-up?
Please.
You worked for Mayor Dinkins. You were a staffer and then became assistant for community affairs at City Hall. Didn't the Dinkins administration cut funding for the arts from the higher levels that had been provided by the Koch administration?
Well, I can't speak to everything that the administration did, but I can tell you that
that is a past record.
No, again, I didn't happen to be the person who got to make that decision, is what I'm trying to say. But I can. Wouldn't that have been nice? But I think the fact is, no, there's no question, it's been a steady pattern of cut. But I guess I think that I'm going to just editorialize here. I think the purpose of this forum, rightfully, is to force candidates to think about the issue and take their initial stances, and then think about, where we need to go from there. I'm trying to be straightforward about, I'm not trying to give the pandering answer in the first instance, but I am trying to signal that I get what the potential is here. I get what the meaning is here. I get how we would benefit. I think we'll take a series of steps. Now, you could argue that we are on the verge of a golden age for all we know. The economy is beginning to improve. Real estate values are at extraordinary level. Maybe we're going to get through a year or two of rough sailing fiscally and then end up in a good place. Maybe we're not. I never go to sleep at night assuming it's going to be a gloriful time. But I think these questions, to some extent, will be determined by the state of our city economy and what kind of revenue we bring in. In a good revenue dynamic, this would be, to me, a priority, because I understand both morally, essentially what it means to the city, but also the kind of multiplier effect it could have, particularly in our schools.
Bill de Blasio, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.